The President. Members, for today's question and answer session, the purpose is to allow members to put questions on the policy address directly to the Chief Executive. The policy address is about the seated problems of Hong Kong, and it has to do with the long-term interests of the people of Hong Kong. Members are duty-bound to put questions to the Chief Executive so as to allow the public understand better the contents of the policy address. I hope members will not disturb today's proceeding so that members have the opportunity to ask the Chief Executive questions. Please stand while the Chief Executive enters the chamber. Members, order please. Mr. Lam Cheuk-ting, please leave the chamber immediately. Mr. Lam Cheuk-ting, please leave the chamber immediately. Mr. Lam Cheuk-ting, please leave the chamber immediately so that you let the Legislative Council continue. The Chief Executive, please answer Mr. Gary Chen's question. There are two parts to Mr. Gary Chen's question. First of all, in relation to this policy address, he would like to know whether we are showing a new style of governance. I hope members will understand that for the policy address 2019, it was drawn up against a very difficult background as to whether we have shedded our previous style of thinking. Well, yesterday at the press conference, I cited a number of examples. In fact, we have some breakthroughs. Say, for example, boldly, we are invoking the Land Resumption Ordinance so as to resume private land for housing. And then we are going to give a new mission, social mission to the Urban Renewal Authority. And then for those living in poor living conditions, they will be given a regular living subsidy. And then we consider the affordability of the public in relation to the idea to subsidize outlying island ferry service. Some people have suggested that we should consider traffic management rather than the government revenue when it comes to the charging of tolls for government-owned tunnels and control areas. So I hope members will understand that a policy address on its own may not be able to allow us to entirely think out of the box. Now that we know that the economic prospects are acute, together with the financial secretary, we need to be very cautious. Of course, we understand that we still have $1,100 billion in our fiscal reserves, but then our expenditure is $600 billion, out of which 400 is recurrent expenditure. I think it is difficult to lower the level of recurrent expenditure irrespective of the economic performance. So when it comes to public finance, if we have to resort to very radical measures, we need to be very cautious. Perhaps owing to this reason, we may not be able to meet the aspirations of some members concerning certain livelihood issues. Mr. Gary Chen referred to the silver hair group, the elderly. Well, for those who are in the middle age bands or the senior age bands, we would like to introduce even more measures so as to help the middle-aged as well as the senior-aged people to rejoin the labor market. Mr. Gary Chen referred to the chaos in the society. I also feel that we are sad and we are bothered, and I spent some time in my policy address on this matter. But then the foremost priority for all of us is to say no to violence and to stop violence. Well, be it in Hong Kong or in the case of overseas countries, we have to safeguard the rule of law. And that's why in my policy address, I have already said that the government will try its utmost to stop violence, and we support the police in rigorously enforcing the law. Right. Gary Fan, please leave the chamber. the chief executive, other than enforcing the law vigorously, I understand that in the society there are also other aspirations. Yesterday, when I delivered my policy address, I also tried to propose a direction for our policies and look at the objectives of the policies so as to address the dissatisfaction of members concerning certain issues. On the 4th of September, I came up with 4 actions in relation to my response to the aspirations. In particular, diversified dialogue platforms have been set up. Myself and the secretaries of departments and directors of bureaus will be listening humbly to the views of the public. And then at the same time, we are now liaising with and identifying experts and academics so as to set up an independent panel so as to help us to examine the issues as well as the deep-seated problems so as to find a way out for Hong Kong. Mr. Gary Chen, I just received a message from a policeman who would like to ask me to put this question to the chief executive. Well, in fact, they are faced with the threat to their lives because someone's neck has been slashed. There are bombs, there are petrol bombs, etc. And their families are being bullied. And even their children have been sort of bullied online. So what can you do to help them, to make sure that their family members will be free from bullying and they will be free from the attacks? Thank you for your concern for the police force. For the past 4 months, our police force worked very hard. And therefore, in my policy address, I have paid tribute and thanked the police force. And I hope that the public would continue to support the police in their law enforcement. Well, in fact, we have coordinated the efforts of many departments so as to render support to the police force. I think just about a week ago, the CS called a press conference and gave you some brief information. It will be difficult to go into a lot of details as to how the departments are supporting the police. I have also met with the staff associations of the police force so as to listen to them and to see in what ways we can enhance our support for the police force.
As for online bullying and doxing, the Privacy Commissioner has taken action. With the experience, we will be reviewing Hong Kong's laws, and we will improve upon them where necessary so that we will be better able to tackle large-scale online doxing and bullying. As for other kinds of support for the police, as you know, recently we have succeeded in seeking an injunction to protect the quarters of the police and other discipline services. I can tell you that in particular for the children of the police, we really are very concerned about them. But then there are things that I don't think should be discussed in public. Mr. Lau Kwok Fan, a point of order. Mr. Charles Mok, what is your point of order? Am I in the right venue? Is this a CE's question and answer session for the chief executive, or is this a question and answer session only for the DAB, not for Legislative Council? I can see the first 3 members lining up. They are all DAB members, and they are spending time to support the police, which is not the aspiration of Hong Kong people. Is this fair? There is an election that is going to take place. Is this a CE's Q&A session that is conducted fairly, or is this a CE's question and answer session for the DAB? Mr. Charles Mok, members who have asked the least questions will have priority. 3 members have only asked 1 question in this term, and they are Mr. Gary Chan, Mr. Lau Kwok Fan, and Mr. Leung Chi Chang. I am acting according to the rules of procedure to give them priority. This is what I call systemic violence. Well, I think we can see a lot of systemic violence today. I'm only talking about the priority in asking questions. It is not that I'm giving the priority to people who have more power. Mr. Au Nok Hin, this is systemic violence. Sorry, this is not a point of order. Please hear me out. Mr. Gary Chan and the CE are suspected to be guilty of perjury. I will not allow you to speak. Mr. Lau Kok Fan, this is not your turn, Mr. Au Nok Hin. It is not your turn to speak. Mr. Au Nok Hin. Mr. Au Nok Hin. I'm asking you, what kind of president you are? You say you will not allow me to speak. Why have you said that? Mr. Roy Kwong, ROP 39, I can ask you to withdraw your remark. You said that I am not allowing you to speak. You should not be saying that as the president. Please keep calm and please retract your remark. I'm not going to retract my remark. Mr. Lau Kok Fan. If members abuse the citing of rules of procedure so that the meeting cannot go on, I will regard that as an exhibition of gross disorderly conduct. Mr. Lau Kok Fan, thank you. Before I ask the question, since just now some members were trying to state something which is not the truth, because the order of speaking should be clear. Please come to your question. CE, yesterday, you announced the policy address. We then went to meet with residents to gauge their reaction. And since we have limited time, I will only concentrate on 2 points. Number one, a similar point as Mr. Gary Chan. Many people are thinking that in a way we are in a state of anarchy. It seems government departments are not working with one heart and one mind. Just now you said that you are also saddened by the present situation. I think that is a sentiment shared by many people. But then as the government, as the CE, members of the public expect you to come up with measures in order to allow society to regain order. I'd like to ask you, what measures can you take so that people can have their normal life again? Many residents have asked me when they can buy the public housing unit they are living in. The DAB has always advocated the relaunch of the tenant purchase scheme, or TPS, so incumbent residents can buy the flat they are living in. The PA talked about the TPS, but then it is old wine in a new bottle. There are 39 estates which are already within the TPS, and you are only talking about selling off the remaining units in those estates. So many members are asking why the administration doesn't consider expanding the TPS to cover other public housing estates. I hope the CE can respond when other public housing estates can be included in TPS. CE, thank you for the questions. About the present state of governance in the SAR at present, I can tell Mr. Lau and others that there is a lot of chaos in society now. Many members of the public have a lot of dissatisfaction with this term of government. However, we are working very hard so that society can return to normal functioning. Of course, I'm not only talking about myself and the accountability team. I'm talking about our 180,000 civil servants. In this very difficult time, they have worked doubly hard so that society can continue to function normally. When I say this, I am also including public organizations, in particular the MTR Corporation and the Airport Authority. However, in order to restore order, well, there are many different factors causing the present chaos. I think members can do their own analyses and you can come to your own conclusions. But in order to suppress the present disorderly situation, as I said, the most important thing is to go by the rule of law and to defend our core values. If somebody says that in order to restore order, the CE can do something which is against the rule of law, which will steer away from the important principle of one country, two systems, I'm afraid I cannot do it. So what I can do is to follow the rule of law in order to tackle the present situation. When I answered Mr. Gary Chan, I listed my work in this respect. I like to appeal to all people in Hong Kong here. We must dissociate with violence together. If there are still people who show understanding towards the acts of the minority of rioters, then the rioters would become only more violent and we will be walking away from our aim of restoring order. Mr. Lau, I think you are also concerned about how we can relaunch the TPS, and especially by including more public housing units to incumbent tenants. Mr. Lau, if you have been reading the PA, I have taken the initiative to respond to this. I have said that I have no objection to relaunch TPS because I understand that tenants in PRH do have the aspiration to own their property. And when their income increases, when their economic power increases, they would like to buy the flat they are living in. So I have no objection about that. In the last 2 years or so, I have been trying better to respond to the aspirations of home ownership of the public. But the fact is, there is a huge shortage of PRH. And the waiting time for PRH is as long as 5.4 years. So it is really very difficult to respond to that aspiration. And that is why in the policy address, I also said that housing is also an issue of social justice and also the rational allocation of housing resources. So right now, I cannot accede to your request because from what I know, every year the Housing Authority is able to get about 8,000 units back from the PRH tenant group, and this will be allocated to needy families. But then I have to put in a footnote here. When we have a better grasp of how much public housing we can provide, I will ask the HA to seriously look into your request so that we can more positively respond to the home ownership aspiration of sitting tenants. But then, for the time being, at least the 39 estates within TPS will be subject to the sale of the remaining 42,000 units. And I'm asking the HA to expedite the process so that tenants who would like to own their own homes will be able to use this channel to satisfy their demand. Mr. Lau, CE, can you promise the public that you will reconsider relaunching the TPS? At that time when TPS was first launched, you did not include all the estates at one go. You did it in stages, and in the end you included 39 estates. So what you said might not be totally correct. You can actually reconsider launching the scheme in phases. Will you look into that, CE? Mr. Lau, my position is, as I told you, when we have a better grasp of the overall provision of public housing, the HA can look seriously into your request. As to when we know we will be able to supply more public housing, of course, that has everything to do with land supply. In the PA, we are doing many things in order to provide land for housing. If that will give us enough confidence that we will be able to deliver in the short, medium, and long term, then of course we'll be very happy to look into your request. Only 2 members have asked questions. Those members who are going to ask questions, please keep your questions concise and short so that more members can ask questions. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. Yes, Mr. Au Nak Hin. I'd like the CE to clarify that actually the dream for home ownership is actually a scam. The loan-to-value ratio is now raised very high, and it will be very difficult for young people to buy housing because the property prices will be hiked. Please wait for your turn before you ask a question. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, this is not for clarification. You asked a question. Well, you can ask the CE to make clarifications on another occasion. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, thank you. President, Mr. CE, the root of the riot is here in the Legislative Council. Pro-democratic camp members wreaked destruction on the 1st of July. That is plain for all to see. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, can you clarify? What I mean is that on the 1st of July, when the LegCo was vandalized, somebody brought in the rioters, and also some members stood between rioters and the police and prevented the police from enforcing the law. So I hope the police would resolutely enforce the law. CE, you have not talked much about welfare in the policy address. Mr. Alvin Young, President, I ask Mr. Leung Chi-chang to do either of the following. One, either he names the people who he is pointing fingers at. Please do not think that you can avoid breaching the rule of order without naming the members he is attacking. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, please clarify. President, everybody has watched television. Everybody knows what happened on the 1st of July. I do not have to clarify. Please do not interrupt me. Please do not interrupt me. I'm asking a question. Please sit down. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, please continue. Mr. Chief Executive, in the policy address, you have not given a lot of coverage to welfare with regard to working family allowance. Mr. Leung Chi-chang has already clarified. I have asked Mr. Leung Chi-chang to clarify, and in my view, he has done so. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, would you like to clarify further? President, I will continue. With regard to CSSA and other allowances, Mr. Leung Chi-chang, Ms. Alice Mack. President, since so many members would ask Mr. Leung Chi-chang to clarify, why don't we suspend the meeting and go on the videotape to see what Mr. Leung Chi-chang exactly said? I cannot remember exactly what he said. Why don't we just suspend the meeting and watch the videotape? Please do not speak out of order, Mr. Leung Chi-chang.
Just now, a member said that you referred to the pandemics. Would you like to clarify, or would you like to withdraw the remark? Mr. President, I was talking about the facts seen on the TV screen. There's no need to clarify. Mr. President, please allow me to continue to ask the Chief Executive. Members, order please. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, please continue. Mr. President, I've noticed that in relation to citizens in the age group of 60 to 64, the DAB has suggested that we should provide a concessionary card for them. Dr. Helena Wong, Mr. President, Mr. Leung Chi-chang must withdraw his allegation. It is a very serious one. It is criminal in nature because he was alleging that the pandemics took the rioters into the LC complex and carried out the vandalism. It is a very serious allegation, so I'll ask him to withdraw such an untrue allegation. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, did what you say or something untrue? I think we watched the TV broadcast that Dr. Jiang Chongtai entered the LC chamber, and people that he brought in carried out some, did something here, unless you are disowning him and saying that he's not part of your camp. Mr. Oh Lok Hin, it is defamation in relation to Mr. Leung Chi-chang's remarks. I was also in the chamber, but I asked the rioters not to destroy the artifacts It was unlike what he had said. That is, we didn't ask people to come in to carry out the vandalism. It is a matter of defamation. So please watch the TV video footage. I asked them not to carry out the damage, not to destroy the facilities. You need to watch your words. Mr. Au Lok Hin, take your seat. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, please continue. Mr. President, there is a police investigation. There's no need, and we better not continue with this. Please stop shouting. You're shouting. Mr. Au Lok Hin, please take your seat. Mr. President, you have to maintain the order. It's impossible for him to shout like this. Now, Chief Executive, for the citizens aged between 60 and 64, I'm concerned about their welfare. Now, currently, this group of people are not provided with any welfare facilities or services. So we ask for a concessionary card for them. They don't enjoy the $2 public transport subsidy, and they don't get any benefits in terms of the elderly healthcare voucher system or scheme. Would you consider giving them the same? Dr. Cheng Chung-tai, what is your point of order? Just now, when Leung Chi-chang spoke, he named me. He said that Cheng Chung-tai and the rioters entered the electrical complex together to carry out the vandalism. It is indeed that I am involved in a legal case. I think what he said is tantamount to perverting the course of justice. Well, I listened to him. I heard that, and that's why I came here. So it's better for us to watch the tape. Meeting suspended.